Here's what I'm on about today. I keep running into, one on Instagram, one on YouTube now, therapists who are not recognizing the importance of teaching people to validate themselves. They're teaching people to look for outside validation. And I just don't understand that. Considering the fact that if you turn your attention outward and are now looking outside for somebody else to validate you, meaning agree with you, find your point of view valid, to see things your way, to understand you, to reassure you, right? These are things that are very appropriate when you're an infant or in that baby stage, right? Like there's a stage of infancy where the child is starting to walk, and so coming into toddlerhood, or even before that, leading up to that, there's this stage where everything the baby does, it looks back at the parent to kind of see, is this okay? Like, what are you thinking about what I'm doing right here? That getting validated seems appropriate because this is a new human onto the earth plane who's kind of getting their feel for things, right? But now we're in this situation in our culture where we've come up through a lot of like punishment and reward. People are doing this masking thing and insecurity, and there's coping mechanisms and defense mechanisms. We've got the medical industry, the mental health industry telling us that, we are flawed and that, something's wrong with us. And like, it's all like totally detached from the fact that the answer is within us. And it's a matter of rectifying what happened to us. So if we set it up so that in order to get right with something that happened to us, which was an external experience, that we have to look for an external reassurance, it's like you're looking for a solution to the problem in the same direction as the problem was. Right? Because ideally, in that stage of being a baby, when the baby's looking at the parent and getting that feedback on, is this okay, what I'm doing right here? Ideally, that baby would then grow into a secure child who knows to trust themselves. Now, that is something that's kind of broken in the punishment and reward parenting paradigm, right? Because we've taken away that ability for a child to learn by feeling themselves, by feeling this navigation system that we have, which is our body. Our body tells us with feelings that we tune into, gut feelings. Is this right? Is this wrong? Does this feel scary? Am I intimidated? What is this? I'm curious about this. All these inner feelings are our navigation system, and we are meant to be tuning to that, to trust it, to navigate Earth. Instead, if we've got punishment and reward parenting, what we end up doing is training our children to behave a certain way in certain circumstances. Now, while there are social kindnesses and some things are appropriate in some settings and some are not, I can understand that and respect that. That is going to be done by being an example of that. We don't want to train our children away from their inner guidance, their inner navigation. Because all masking is, like I'm watching this video on autism, it's like all masking is a coping mechanism. And every human being has them. So if you've gone your whole life and you just realized, oh, I've been doing this my whole life and that's not even really who I am, that's pretty normal for this time on Earth, to be just realizing things about yourself. Very normal, because we have things operating in our subconscious below the level of our awareness. That's a human thing. All humans, right? And anytime we've been traumatized, anytime we've had an experience that we couldn't make sense of or were overwhelmed by. Anytime we didn't process through the wave of energy that we were in, we lodged it in us, and now we are coping with it. We're either coping in a way that makes us avoid feeling it, or whatever. Or avoid seeing it, or avoid ever experiencing it again, or suppressing it, denying it, all these things, right? But what it comes down to is we can trust ourselves, and in order to get back to that, I feel like it's very important for us to teach people, especially if we're in the position of teaching, of therapy, of counseling, like these counselors and therapists, you can tell that they're not aware of the root cause of the issue, or otherwise they would be directing people back inward, and they would be just reassuring or just giving permission to people to validate themselves. Validate yourself. You know why? Nobody else has your point of view. Nobody else on the whole planet. Nobody. You really are alone in that perspective. It's yours. If you don't validate it, who's going to? What other people can validate for you, if they are validating, is that you have your own unique perspective and that it's valid. If they're validating you on, oh, that's a good perspective to have, now we're getting into you trying to fit into the box that they've created, that they're in themselves. Sure, we can group like-minded individuals, right? That's understandable, but I wouldn't want to box them all in and say everyone has to stay in that box and think alike, because that's not how we evolve and grow. And this is a life of evolution. We are constantly evolving and growing, and you can't stop it. And when you stop it, unhealthy things start to happen, because the energy, the stagnant energy, is what causes illness in us, is what causes our bodies to break down. These are the misunderstandings and the coping mechanisms and the defense mechanisms, because what it is that there's an internal part of us that's below the level of our awareness that is fighting against the truth. So that means there's a war in us. Of course, a war in us is going to erupt into some sort of illness, right? So these wars within us get balanced out and neutralized by giving ourselves permission to validate ourselves. In fact, it's our job. In fact, we're now the parent to the unhealed, unloved parts of us who feel like they need reassurance and validation. That's our job, each of us. We have full permission. If you look at an astrology chart, I have twins. I mentioned that in my last video, if you watched it. You know that. If not, well, there it is. They're born 30 minutes apart, and I do astrology. So this was one of the things I looked at. Like, okay, so how can twins with the same astrology chart have such different energy? It's because we are different beings, right? Like, there's more than just the energy you come into Earth with. But even the energy you come into Earth with, even if we were just looking at my twins, 1/2 of an hour changes the energy that they are working with in this lifetime. Even 2 minutes, because the moon moves very fast. And the angles matter, okay? So every single person has a different energy imprint for Earth that they're working through and looking at life through the lens of, and balancing out the energy of, and having the experiences of, and having the perspective of, and having the potential to grow from. Now we also, besides that, we have our soul's intention, right? And the perpetuation of the collective's energy and our ancestry. So there's like 3 layers of energy that comes in, but what's always going to be unique is the angles at which that energy is being expressed or perceived on Earth from your body. We each have our own. So every perspective is unique, and you have to be the one to validate your own perspective. You know, validation, all it means is you understand yourself. That's it. It doesn't mean that that's the truth. It doesn't mean that you'll always look at things from that angle. It doesn't mean, all it means is this is the perspective I've had for this experience, and that's valid because it's mine and I had it. And this is the lens I'm looking through. No one could tell me that I was wrong for seeing it from that angle. There may be a bigger, expanded awareness that would reveal something else about it, which would reveal to me that there's more to know. But it doesn't make the perspective I had from the angle I was looking at for the experience that I had wrong. I had that view for a reason. I need to validate it because that is valid for my bigger experience that I am eventually expanding into. Right? Here's an example. So I've been on this journey of healing for more than, let's say about 10 years. And now when I come across somebody who has just started their healing journey, maybe they're just realizing that they can heal themselves, and so they've just started to do some of the stuff that I may have started doing like a long time ago, right? 10 years ago. Now, I'm not just like looking at that person and going, oh, they're so clueless. They don't even know. They haven't even begun to get into what they're about to have to go through, right? No, I've been in their shoes. I've been at the beginning of my journey, right? And I know that it's a perfect unfolding. It's divine. It's gorgeous. That the information will come when it's meant to. That the next step in front of me was the next step for me. Not what somebody else told me to do, unless that felt like the right thing for me, from within me. Now, even when I veered off track because I wanted to look into something that someone told me was the good thing to look at, and even if I looked into that and spent some time doing that, and then realized, oh, it wasn't for me, that's okay too. Now I have that perspective too. Now I know what I do want by knowing what I don't want. So when I look at the person who's just stepping on to the process of their healing journey, I'm looking at that from a level of compassion and curiosity and interest. There's no like condescending, arrogant part of me that wants to like use this as some sort of like hierarchical status symbol or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, having been in their shoes, having had a perspective of a beginner and a process of a long journey is valid to me, because now it serves me to be a compassionate, kind person, which I want to be. You know what I mean? So that's just one example of why a perspective that I outgrew would still have been valid to have had. You know what I mean? So, and there's all different reasons. This is a divine orchestration. I couldn't even begin to explain them all or understand them all, because for me, it's more of a felt experience. It's more of a beautiful unfolding of my awareness, just like, oh, oh. Like, and I'm not hating on that little version of me that just took the first steps. Gosh, she was so needed, right? So my point of view is valid no matter what step I'm on. My point of view is valid, and it doesn't mean that I'll always have that point of view. Your point of view is valid for you. It's important for you to validate that that was your view, because you are trying to understand something about it. So first acknowledging that you have it and validating that you have had it. Like, if you don't acknowledge you've had it, first of all, you're not learning about it, right? Second, if you don't validate that you've had it, if you're just always seeking for someone else to validate your point of view, that's taking a lot of your energy. And you'll never progress to the next steps, which would actually like resolve it for you and let you move on. So if you do look outside yourself, probably one example of what might happen is You'll get a lot of conflicting answers. You will be given reason to go back and to look at yourself eventually. Maybe it could take years. It could take years of you searching different people's teachings, reading different books, trying different things. And if that is what it is, then that is what it is. Then maybe that's what's meant for you. But eventually you come to the point where you realize, oh, it's me that needs to validate this, not them. I don't need them to be validating me. I need to be validating me because it's my experience. I'm the one in this body. I'm the one with this perspective. Nobody could possibly validate it for me. They could never even see it the same way I see it. Maybe they can relate. Maybe they can understand what I see. But they are not in my eyes. They are not in my navigation system with me. You know? You know who can be in your navigation system with you? Like a higher version of yourself who has been there, who can step in, you know? So that's why we trust our intuitive prompts, because the guidance that we get through our intuition and our urges towards curiosity and things like that, these are part of the divine guidance. These are the part of the divine unfolding and the divine plan. And it feels good. The reason you know that that's right for you is because of the way it feels, right? You're not like, sure, it might be intimidating to step out of the box you've been in for parts of you that are still fragmented and in misunderstanding. So what happens is when you go to step out and you can't because there's a fearful part of you, then you tend to that fearful part of you and you validate that fearful part of you and you look at why are you fearful in that, and you validate the reasons and you accept it and you love the part of you that feels that way. So like the whole entire process is the journey, and it is worthwhile, and it is like this process of just loving yourself, all of it, every step. So the places where you feel snagged or in resistance are just revealing to you one of the parts of you that isn't quite on board with what you're doing, that may still be suffering a misunderstanding or may still need your presence and love to feel trusting enough to get on board with you in your forward movement. Make sense? Let me know what you think.